Simon, what did you make of the FBI release, but also your reflections generally on how the United States marked that 20-year anniversary?
Well, I'll do the latter first. Look, a very poignant ceremony. Biden on site with former presidents Clinton and Obama. I'm not sure if George W. Bush joined them for the event in some of the imagery I saw. But with each year, the memory recedes, and there are more and more younger Australians and Americans who didn't live through it the way that perhaps people of my age, and I suspect yours, Kieran, for whom it was immediate and vivid and seared in our brains through that real-time, raw emotional content of it. And so I think because it casts such a long shadow over American and indeed Australian foreign policy, I actually think it's incredibly important that younger generations, and this is what those anniversaries do, that they give younger generations the opportunity, if you will, to appreciate the significance of it, and indeed the role that responding to terrorist threats continues to play in the lives of citizens of democratic countries all around the world. Now, on the FBI document release, look, the timing is really interesting. Number one, coinciding with the 20th anniversary, the 9/11 Commission, in its 2004 report, did point to contact between Saudi government consular officials in the United States and the 9/11 hijackers. What these documents do is sort of suggest that those contacts were not incidental, weren't accidental. They seem to be deliberate and a little more deep than we might have first suspected. So they add a little more fuel to fire that was already there. And indeed, as I said, the 2004 9/11 Commission already had some of this detail. This takes it, sort of raises the intrigue a little more. And of course, Kieran, coinciding with the anniversary, the victims' families have seized on this information. And for them, they want to know more and to really understand if there was any links between the Saudi government per se and the 9/11 hijackers and the deaths of their loved ones. So the timing does give it that rawness and that call to arms, if you will, for the victims' families and their lawyers.
Let's turn our attention to the Biden vaccine push. And it's this, I was just reflecting on this great dichotomy in the United States of some of the world's best scientists who came up with the technology in many cases here to provide the vaccine, yet a big chunk of the population of that country, much bigger than a lot of other like-minded democracies, not willing to take the advantage of the breakthrough that their fellow Americans have come up with, Simon.
Yeah, and Kieran, here's the other irony. The Trump administration that threw billions at this and cleared the red tape so America's vast scientific apparatus could develop these vaccines in record time, was at the same time trying to downplay the severity of the pandemic, number one. And number two, Republican politicians seeking to emulate Trump, or at least to win Trump's favor or to win the favor of his base, continuing to push the strongest anti-vaccine, at least anti-vaccine mandate lines you're seeing in the United States. Kieran, this falls on a political fault line, right? And I come back to, before our interview this afternoon, Kieran, I was just doing some reading about the state of Mississippi that has its Republican political leaders pushing against vaccine mandates for COVID, and yet there's a state that has the most stringent vaccine mandates for its school children on mumps, on smallpox, on tuberculosis, on a number of other things. You cannot get your kid into a school in the state of Mississippi unless they're vaccinated for 3 or 4 or 5 other things. But purely, I think, for political reasons, they're not the same political leaders are not going to impose that same standard when it comes to COVID.
But so if you go back to and I know this is probably a broader look at it, but I'm interested because this fault line that we talk about, if you go back to the actual vision of the founding fathers in the United States, they talk about liberty and so on, but it's not unbridled, is it? I mean, it's
No.
up until a point when you start impacting other people. And effectively, a once-in-a-generation pandemic surely needs to be seen in that context.
And we didn't pussyfoot about it when it came to other pandemics in the past, when it came to smallpox, when it came to polio, when it came to tuberculosis. We don't, for instance, just because you can drive, we make sure that you drive safely, right? Liberty comes with responsibilities to your fellow citizens. The First Amendment, you don't have the right to yell fire in a crowded theatre and to start a panic. Liberty was never intended to be totally untrammeled. Liberty is given to people in respect of one another, so that we can collectively be a stronger people and to contribute to our prosperity and security and the pursuit of our interests, but not at the cost of doing harm to the body politic and not at the cost of doing harm to our fellow citizens.
Simon Jackman, great to get your insights as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran.